In this unit, we examine a thin slice of a tree and a claim that sounds at first completely impossible. Here is the claim. From the rings alone, nothing but the pattern of light and dark inside a piece of old wood, a person can name the exact calendar year that wood grew. Not roughly, not somewhere in the 1200s. You already know half of the secret. You count the rings to find a tree's age, but an age is not a date. And turning one into the other took an idea quietly clever enough to let a single man name the exact year a nameless ruin was built. Today we learn how to read the year out of a piece of wood. Part 1. Count the rings. Cut across a tree trunk and you find a set of rings, one inside the next. Each year the tree lays down one new ring around its outside, so you count the rings and you have the tree's age. But notice the limit. Counting the rings tells you how many years the tree lived, not which years. A stump with 200 rings might be a tree felled last winter, or a beam pulled from a ruin 1,000 years old. So here is the puzzle of this unit. How do you get from an age to a date? To answer, we must stop counting the rings and start reading them. Part 2. The shared bad year. Look more closely and the rings are not all alike. Some are fat and wide, some thin, pinched to almost nothing. That difference is not random, it is a diary. A tree builds a wide ring in a good year of rain and warmth, and a thin ring in a hard year of drought. So the run of wide and thin rings, read from the middle outward, is a record of good years and bad, one line per year for the tree's whole life. Now here is the turn. A drought does not visit one tree, it visits the whole forest. When the rain fails across a region, every tree has a hard year at the same time and writes the same thin ring. When the rains return, they all write a fat one. So the pattern is not private to a single tree, it is regional. The same run of thick and thin pressed into every tree at once. And a shared pattern of wide and narrow bands like that, well, you have seen the shape before, it is a barcode. Part 3, the barcode match. The man who saw this was not a forester, he was an astronomer, Andrew Ellicott Douglas, chasing sunspots at the start of the 20th century. He suspected the sun's cycles quietly changed our weather, and to test it he needed a record of the past far longer than any written one. So he turned to the trees, hoping their rings had kept the diary that people had not. He called his tool crossdating. Watch how it works, because it is beautiful. Start with a living tree you cut today. You know the year of its outermost ring, so you can count inward and fix a true calendar year to every ring, back to the trees first. That gives you a dated barcode. Now take an older beam, one already old when your living tree was a sapling. You do not know its years, but if the two overlapped in time, even a little, they lived through the same droughts and good years, so their barcodes must share a stretch. Slide the beam's pattern along the living trees until thin falls on thin and fat on fat, and it locks into place. Now every ring on that beam has a year of its own. Then do it again, with an even older timber. And again. Beam by beam, each sharing a patch of pattern with the last, you build one unbroken master sequence, running back century after century far beyond the oldest living tree. And any scrap of wood from that region, however ancient, can be slid along it until it clicks in, and read for its exact years. The impossible claim, made ordinary. Not counting, matching. Part 4, dating the ruins. In the American Southwest stand the great stone ruins of the ancestral Puebloans, cliff dwellings and vast masonry towns, abandoned long before any European arrived to write a date down. Pueblo Bonito in Chaco Canyon is hundreds of rooms of careful stonework. And for a long time, no one could truly say when it was built. A century off? 2? The experts simply argued. But those buildings had wooden roof beams, and Douglas had his growing barcode. He had 2 barcodes that would not yet touch. One ran back from living trees into the recent past, the other floated free, a long pattern lifted from the old ruin beams, its years counted one from the next but pinned to no calendar, sharing no overlap with the living record. Between them lay a gap, and Douglas needed one piece of wood of exactly the right age to bridge it. In 1929, he found it, a single charred beam from a site in Arizona whose barcode overlapped both sequences at once, closing the gap and fusing the two into one continuous record. the floating chronology stopped floating. Every beam in every ruin snapped onto a real calendar, and so, for the first time, the ruins of the Southwest could be dated. Not to a vague century, to the year, people could finally say when these silent towns rose and when they emptied. Part 5. The Climate Diary. Remember what a thin ring means: a dry year. So the same master barcode that hands you dates hands you something more, for free. A weather report from 1,000 years ago. Run your eye along the sequence and the droughts stand out on their own, thin band after thin band, each pinned to its exact year. So a beam in the wall of a ruin is 2 documents at once. It tells you when the building went up, and it tells you what the sky was doing while people lived beneath it, every dry spell, every good stretch, every long and punishing drought. The wood remembers the weather that the people themselves never wrote down. The review card. Let us gather what we have learned. A tree does far more than grow. It keeps a ledger, one honest line for every year it is alive. Those wide and narrow rings are not a private accident, but a shared regional barcode. And by sliding barcode against barcode, overlap upon patient overlap, careful people built a ruler that reaches back through the centuries and laid it against the beams of the past until the silent ruins finally spoke their true dates. A tree writes down every year it is alive, and for the longest time no one knew how to read it. Then someone learned its quiet alphabet and found that the past had been legible all along, waiting there in the wood for anyone willing to look closely enough. Class dismissed.